Welcome back to the thrilling crime-solving journey of Xu Qi'an in the Nightwatcher, Episode 2. In the previous episode, Xu Qi'an, with his sharp modern thinking and keen sense of logic, began reinvestigating the case from a completely different angle. And it seems, he's uncovered something big. This episode features a mind-blowing twist as Xu Qi'an exposes a critical flaw in the case. One that even shocks the city magistrate. Was there really 150,000 taels of silver on that doomed convoy? Or was it all just an elaborate scheme to deceive the world? Grab your popcorn and drinks, this episode is intense, clever, and full of surprises. Let's dive into the turning point of the tax silver case. Right now. Chapter 4, time to show what I've got. The moment Xu stepped into the inner hall, he felt it three sharp, assessing gazes locked onto him like drawn blades. The man in the embroidered robe must be the city magistrate. Cloud and crane patterns, fourth-rank official. No doubt. That older man with the silver emblem. Nightwatch Bureau. And that girl, damn. Doll-like face, glowing eyes. Wonder if she's married. Xu En's gaze briefly swept over her curves before he snapped himself back to focus. Head down. Humble. Meek. Harmless. Magistrate Chen sat rigidly on the central chair, his voice cold and commanding, every word landing like a gavel strike. Xu En. 3 days ago, when you were arrested, why didn't you mention having vital information? You know the consequences of withholding a lead. A seasoned bureaucrat, clearly. The kind who never ask directly, preferring to apply pressure and let the accused unravel themselves. But Xu En had made it this far. That alone meant his gamble was working. Calmly, he replied, my elder cousin, Xu Erlang, visited me earlier. I asked him to bring me the case files. Start with honesty. Gain their footing. Everyone in the room knew Xu Erlang. Not because he was famous, but because he was the son of Xu Pingzi, the capital's former chief constable. Naturally, the three officials had done their homework. Magistrate Chen narrowed his eyes. And what does that have to do with this so-called lead of yours? I read the files, Xu En said evenly. And from them, I pieced together the truth. Hold it. Magistrate Chen leaned forward, suspicious. From the case files alone. That's not what he expected. His tone shifted. I've solved the case, Xu En said, nodding slowly. There was no demon. That got their attention. Magistrate Chen slammed his palm on the table, voice rising with disbelief and fury. Enough nonsense. Guards, bring the canes. 200 strokes for this fool. The official narrative had long been settled. A demon had attacked during the tax convoy. That theory had been reinforced, repeated, and accepted especially by the three people now staring at Xu En like he'd lost his mind. But the older man clearly from the Nightwatch Bureau raised a hand, halting the bailiffs. Wait, Magistrate Chen. Let's hear him out, he said, eyes glinting as they studied Xu En closely. Curious. Calculating. Finally, Xu En thought. Showtime. He steadied his voice, projecting calm confidence. According to the gate guard's testimony, my uncle entered the city at the second quarter of the Mao hour. By the third quarter of the Chen hour, the convoy reached Guangnan Street. That's when the sudden gust hit. The horses panicked, and the silver supposedly tumbled into the river. Magistrate Chen nodded. Yes. That's exactly why we concluded a water-dwelling demon ambushed the convoy. Wrong. Xu En's voice cut through the air like a blade. The wind was a distraction. So was the explosion. Both were smoke and mirrors to draw attention away from a critical flaw in the story. Magistrate Chen leaned in. What flaw? Even the girl had stopped chewing her candied fruit. Her bright eyes sparkled with intrigue. They'd pored over these files for days. Every line. Every word. They were sure of the timeline. So what had they missed? Xu Qi'an looked up. 15,000 taels of silver. That's what the report says was being transported. Gentlemen, how much does that weigh? The Nightwatch agent froze. The girl tilted her head toward the ceiling, lost in thought. Magistrate Chen scowled. If you've got something to say, say it. No need to fish in murky waters. Figures. Math isn't exactly their strong suit. Xu Qi'an sighed internally. It weighs 9,375 jin. That's over 5 tons in your world's weight system. Now they were listening. The Nightwatch man's brow furrowed. He was close. Xu Qi'an could see it. The girl blinked. What does that number prove? That you're not very bright. Xu Qi'an thought, but kept that to himself. What's the distance from the South Gate to Guangnan Street? He asked. 30 li, the older man replied immediately. And how many busy marketplaces lie along the route? 4. And how fast does a poorly trained horse travel? The Nightwatch officer suddenly shot to his feet, eyes wide, realization crashing over him like a tidal wave. That's when it all started to click. For 3 days, they'd chased phantom demons, combing the river, tracing shadows. But they'd been chasing the wrong enemy. Xu Qi'an had just turned the entire case on its head. Magistrate Chen looked stunned, as if he'd been slapped. Because he still didn't get it, and that said a lot about him. He glanced sideways at the girl in yellow for comfort. At least she looked more confused than him. But the convoy did reach Guangnan Street, she said, voice crisp as wind chimes. People saw the horses bolt. They saw the silver fall into the river. Magistrate Chen nodded. How do you explain that? All eyes turned to Xu Qi'an again. He smiled. Because they weren't transporting silver. Magistrate Chen barked. Nonsense. Even if your uncle and the soldiers were blind, the bystanders saw the silver glinting before it sank. That's in the official reports. He waved the file in his hand. Are those lies too? Xu Qi'an held his ground. What you see isn't always what's real, magistrate. But I'll gladly prove it. He gestured toward the table. May I borrow some ink and paper? Chen waved him on, irritated. Xu Qi'an shuffled forward, chains clinking softly with each step. He ground the ink, unfurled a sheet of zon paper, and began to write. His strokes were quick, messy but confident. Here, he said, holding out the paper. Prepare the items listed here. That'll clear up everything. Magistrate Chen took the sheet, scanned it and frowned. It made no sense to him. Let me see, the girl in yellow chimed in, reaching over with a delicate, snow-pale hand. She studied it for a moment, and gave up. The Nightwatch officer, Li Yuxuan, took a glance. His face betrayed nothing. He simply straightened the curled corner of the page, passed it back to the magistrate, and folded his hands behind his back. And then he waited. So did everyone else. Because now, Xu Qi'an had everyone's attention. And the real performance was about to begin. Chapter 5. Breaking the case. A short while later, 2 constables returned, lugging in a pile of strange tools and materials. They placed them on the stone table in the center of the chamber. The 3 officials, city magistrate Chen, a stern middle-aged man, and a young woman in a flowing yellow robe, cast curious glances at the items. Then turned to face Xu Qi'an. Magistrate Chen folded his arms. Everything you requested is here. Now give this court a convincing explanation. His tone had softened. During the wait, this 4th-rank official had racked his brain trying to disprove Xu Qi'an's theory. He couldn't. As bizarre as it was, it held water. Still, The mystery remained: how could the missing tax silver have exploded in the river? What trick was hiding behind that silver? Xu Qi'an bowed slightly. If I solve this case, will Your Excellency petition the Emperor to lift my family's punishment? In the Great Feng Empire, filial piety carried legal weight. A child could atone for their family's crimes through meritorious service. Magistrate Chen gave a firm nod. Naturally. Satisfied, Xu Qi'an turned to the table. Among the tools were candles, salt, porcelain bowls, and thin metal wires, simple items, but all he needed. The task was basic, at least in theory: heat and electrolyze salt to extract a reactive metal sodium. In most ancient worlds, this would be impossible. Electricity didn't exist. The melting point of sodium chloride was too high. But this wasn't an ordinary world. Here, Xu Qi'an knew of a profession capable of performing such feats: the alchemists of the Celestial Observatory. Sixth-rank spellcasters who merged magic and science. Their inventions powered daily life across the empire: lamps that burned without oil, carriages that moved without beasts. Xu Qi'an wasn't sure if sodium was the explosive substance used in the fake silver. But that didn't matter. What mattered was proving the possibility that it could be made, could be mistaken for silver, and could explode in water. A new hypothesis, a new direction. That was enough to crack open this case. Back in his past life, had worked on a brutal murder case, one that had left a permanent scar on his memory. He and his fellow detectives had pulled multiple all-nighters, stringing theories together with threadbare clues, discarding one idea after another until the truth finally emerged. This was the same bold guesswork, followed by methodical proof. He began by dissolving the crude salt in water, then covered a porcelain bowl with a thin rice paper filter and poured the mixture in. Once filtered, he placed the bowl over a candle flame and stirred continuously with a bamboo stick. Soon, the water evaporated, leaving behind sparkling white crystals, refined sodium chloride. The trio of officials watched closely. Magistrate Chen, the stone-faced elder, and the girl in yellow, young, bright-eyed, with an oval face like a peeled quail egg, smooth, unblemished, and faintly luminous. Xu Qi'an glanced at her, smiling. "You're with the Celestial Observatory, aren't you?" He'd noticed the feng shui compass hanging at her waist. No one outside the observatory carried one of those. The girl giggled. "My mentor's the chief astrologer himself." Xu An's brows lifted slightly. The chief's own disciple? He suppressed a quip about her assets. Instead, his voice turned respectful. "Sister, would you help me melt the salt crystals?" The melting point was over 800 degrees Celsius, impossible without magic. She pursed her lips. "I'm a feng shui adept, not an alchemist." "But," she added with a smirk, "my master did give me a toy." She unhooked the compass and tapped it lightly. Her slender fingers traced a few symbols. The character for fire lit up in red. "Stand back." Xu Qi'an took 2 quick steps back. The moment she activated the charm, a jet of flame whooshed out, engulfing the porcelain bowl. "Stop!" Xu Qi'an shouted, then darted forward and stuck 2 wires into the molten salt. "Now activate lightning, the thunder glyph. Control the voltage carefully. This part is tricky. We may fail a few times." The girl twisted the compass again. The symbol for thunder glowed. Sparks danced in the air and struck the wires. Sizzle. Crackle. The molten salt hissed violently as the electricity surged through it. A moment later, Xu Qi'an peered into the bowl, holding his breath. There, at the center, lay a lump of silvery metal, lightweight, shimmering faintly. Around it, unreacted crystals and blackened impurities clung to the edges. He grinned. "First try." That never happens. Back in his old world, electrolysis like this required precise voltages. He'd braced for repeated failure. And yet, it had worked. Magistrate Chen and the older man rushed forward. They gazed into the bowl. What they saw looked exactly like silver. Chen's pupils contracted. The older man Li Yuxuan, the emperor's inspector, clenched his fists. A light flickered in his eyes, cutting through the fog of doubt like lightning. Xu Qi'an picked up the metal with a slip of rice paper. This is much lighter than real silver, but it looks almost identical. If someone used this as a counterfeit, it would explain everything. Please examine it closely. He handed it to the magistrate. By now, the metal's color had faded slightly, looking even more like tarnished silver. Li Yuxuan took it, weighed it in his hand. So light, if this was being transported instead of silver. It all makes sense. Lady Tai V, your opinion? The girl took the sample, frowning as she examined it. Her gaze flicked back to Xu Qi'an, full of wonder. Wait, are you an alchemist? Xu Qi'an shrugged. Nah. Just a guy who paid attention in chemistry class. The officials were still digesting the implications when Magistrate Chen's face darkened. But even if this explains the swapped silver, what caused the explosion? If no monsters were hiding in the river, then why did the water erupt? Xu Qi'an didn't answer. He walked over to the scholar's desk, lifted a brush washing bowl filled with water, and tossed the sodium chunk in. FWOOOM. Flames erupted violently. Smoke billowed. Boom. The bowl shattered. Shards scattered across the floor. The room fell silent. Chen stood rooted to the spot. That was. Sodium reacts violently with water, Xu Qi'an said. It explodes. That's what caused the blast in the river when the fake silver fell in. Li Yuxuan muttered, half to himself, we were deceived from the start. Someone staged the explosion and the strange wind to make us think it was the work of a spirit or monster. They diverted our entire investigation. No wonder the Celestial Observatory's aura readers found no trace of demonic energy. Xu Qi'an added. And only 1,000 taels were recovered from the river. He continued. If I had to guess, those were genuine silver ingots placed on top, to mask the deception. Every puzzle piece clicked into place. Well done, Xu Qi'an. Li Yuxuan's eyes burned with approval. Very well done. Then, unexpectedly, he reached out, straightened Xu Qi'an's crooked collar, and patted him on the shoulder. The gesture startled Xu Qi'an. Why is this man being so kind? But Magistrate Chen wasn't smiling. His expression had grown darker. If that was fake silver, then where's the real silver? Tai Vi's face turned grave. The tax silver was transported from the treasury to the capital. It passed through many hands. To trace it now would mean implicating half the bureaucracy. And recovering it, like finding a needle in the ocean. This is beyond our jurisdiction. We'll need to report to His Majesty. Chen nodded grimly. He was thinking the same. But Li Yuxuan narrowed his eyes. No. If the silver had been swapped long ago, it would have been discovered. The only possibility is that it was exchanged recently. Magistrate Chen's eyes lit up. That changed everything. It drastically narrowed the scope of the investigation. Prepare my carriage quickly, he barked. I must leave the city at once. Li Yuxuan followed close behind. Don't forget your promise, Magistrate Xu Qi'an called after him. Chapter 6 Salt and Silver. Hey. The girl in the golden dress, her name was Kaiwei, blinked her wide, glimmering eyes. How can salt turn into silver? She hesitated for a moment, then pulled out a piece of sugarcane and offered it to Xu. Here. You can have this. Trying to win me over. Huh. The two officials had vanished down the corridor. Xu turned back, collected his thoughts, and replied, I once read an ancient book that taught how to turn salt into silver. Kaiwei's eyes lit up. Where's this book? Who wrote it? It's called Chemistry, Volume 12, Xu said smoothly. As for the author, probably the Ministry of Education. She frowned, confused. He went on, the book's long gone. But I remember everything in it, word for word. Her breath quickened. Then tell me. Now. Xu sighed dramatically. I might be executed by sundown. Not exactly in the mood to give lectures. You're such a pain, she snapped, scowling. The Stargazer Hall doesn't interfere with court matters. Your fate lies with the Emperor. Bargaining with me gets you nothing. Then what's stopping you from recruiting me? Xu shot back. With your grand astrologers standing in the court, helping out someone like me guilty only by association should be easy. Right. He needed a backup plan. If the missing tax silver wasn't found, he'd be dead. Kaiwei looked him over from head to toe. You're clearly a martial artist. Why are you trying to become an arcanist? Most cultivators began their training in childhood. Switching from martial arts to mystic arts at his age? Nearly impossible. Xu face turned solemn. It's not about climbing ranks. I just deeply admire the Grand Astrologer's wisdom and grace. She narrowed her eyes at him. Then at least tell me what was in the book. Her gaze was pure, eyes large and clear, too clear. In his past life, Xu had only seen such innocence in children. It's complex, he said, baiting her. Way beyond common sense. You'd need years of study. A patient teacher, maybe even a classroom. I don't buy that, Kaiwei scoffed. When it comes to alchemy, no one in the 9 provinces can rival the Stargazer Hall. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, Xu began to chant, reciting the periodic table like an ancient mantra. Huh. She stared at him, baffled. Her brows twitched in frustration. He was mocking her. We only take children, she muttered, snatching the sugarcane from his hand. With a huff, she turned and left, her silk skirt swaying gracefully behind her. I'm a child, in spirit, Xu thought, opening his mouth to protest, then realized. Oh, she meant literal children. So much for that path. 2 days passed. Xu spent them in the prison's dark belly. Nerves stretched thin. What if they didn't recover the stolen silver in time? What if they found it too late after he'd already been exiled? What if Magistrate Chen claimed the credit for himself? In this cruel hierarchy, he was nothing. Just another disposable pawn. He sighed again. Guess all I can do now is pray. Clang. The heavy iron door at the end of the corridor creaked open. A guard stepped in, torchlight flickering across his scarred face. He pulled out a keyring and unlocked the cell. Xu, the guard said. You're free to go. Relief surged through him. His fists clenched. They found it, the silver's been recovered. Come sign the papers. Then you can leave, the guard added, eyeing him with a hint of awe. You're damn lucky, kid. My second uncle, where is he? Xu asked quickly. No questions, the guard barked. Just move. He gave Xu a none too gentle tap on the backside with his baton. Xu hurried out of the cell. He signed the release papers under the scribe's watchful eye. Then, escorted by the guard, he was taken to retrieve the clothes he'd worn when first arrested. A constable led him through the back gate of the capital prefecture's administration building. The sky in the east had just begun to blush. The street ahead lay quiet and empty. Clang. The noise of the iron door jolted Xu Bingzi from sleep. His eyes cracked open, bloodshot and hollow. His face, weathered and grim, bore some resemblance to Xu An's. But where his own son, Xu Nian, was striking and noble in appearance, Xu Bingzi looked little better than a beggar. Across the corridor, Madame Li stirred as well. Her gaunt face twisted with dread. They stared at each other through the bars. She whispered, voice raw, "Husband, I'd rather die than be sent to the pleasure division." Despite days in prison, Madame Li's allure hadn't faded. At 35, she still possessed the kind of mature beauty that turned heads. Even now, visibly thinner and shaken, she radiated sensuality. The pleasure division. A living hell for women. Xu Bingzi's body was covered in bruises and wounds. His mouth opened, words trembling on his lips, but all that came out were tears. "My wife, I've failed you." His voice cracked. "Let us die together. In the next life, I'll serve you like a beast of burden to make up for this. But our children, my nephew, in 5 days, he'd known nothing but torture." The women had it worse. The Xu family had 2 daughters, one 16, the other just 5. Both now lay curled in the corner of the cell, roused by the noise. The 5-year-old rubbed her eyes and whimpered, "Mama," still unaware of what fate awaited her. The older girl sat up. A cascade of messy black hair framed her delicate, oval face. Her eyes were large and bright, her lips soft pink. A straight, high nose gave her a refined, sculpted beauty like she belonged in marble, not chains. She leaned on her mother's shoulder, eyelashes trembling with fear. Several guards approached, swords at their sides, boots echoing like war drums. Madame Li's expression hardened into despair. Xu Bingzi gripped the bars until his knuckles turned white. His mistake losing the tax silver had doomed them all. Especially his youngest. Just 5, and already being marched toward a life of darkness. A father's heart could only shatter. "Xu Bingzi," a guard called, unlocking the door. "Sign the papers. You're free to go." He blinked. What did you say?" "You're free. You can leave." Xu Bingzi staggered. Is this some kind of joke? Aren't you supposed to take me to be executed?" "No idea," the guard muttered. "Orders from above. If you want answers, ask them yourself." Madame Li clutched her daughters, silent and wary. The whole family followed behind the guard, their footsteps echoing through the dim corridor. "Husband," Madame Li whispered. "What if they're tricking us? Who would joke about something like this?" Xu Bingzi limped forward. Still wounded. He didn't understand any of it. Relief mixed with suspicion clouded his mind. "It must be Xu Nian," Madame Li gasped. "He's been running around non-stop these past few days, probably pulling strings for us. That must be why the court spared us." The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became. Don't forget his mentor used to be the deputy minister of justice. Back in the 18th year of the Yuanjing era. Xu Bingzi frowned. That had been over 20 years ago. Still, he couldn't think of anyone else with the power to help them now. "Maybe you're right. I told you," she said proudly. "Xu Nian's a dragon among men. Remember how I begged you to let him learn martial arts? But no. You gave that chance to that little rabbit Xuan instead." "Mama, I want to eat a little rabbit," the younger daughter said, peeking up with innocent eyes and a finger in her mouth, pure hunger glowing in her gaze.
Thanks for listening till the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter.